Okay, so now I want to talk to you about effective delivery in public speaking. And it's going to be hard to do it in this video because obviously the delivery style that you would use talking to an audience, a live audience, let's say a classroom of students in a public speaking class, would be different than the delivery that you would do if you were a newscaster. In fact, some of you, if you've taken any acting classes, will know that there's differences in acting for stage versus acting for camera, and that's due really to the nature of the intimacy that the camera provides. Particularly in, so for example, how this shot is framed is a close-up, and so the delivery style that you would use if you were speaking to the audience in a close-up would be very different than if you were in the kind of like the idea of a wide shot, which would be an entire stage where you would be a speaker on a stage talking to an audience. So the magnitude of your delivery style will change, obviously, when you're in a telecast. Gestures are more limited. Um, your The variety of your volume is probably not as much because you probably want to have a consistent volume if you're being microphoned you're being mic'd in a recorded video. You can't be screaming, or I guess you can, but you'd have to have somebody very carefully modulating how your voice, the volume peaked for your voice in that setup. So everything is a little bit smaller when doing effective delivery, let's say in a video telecast, than it would be in a live performance in front of a live audience. But the rules are still basically the same. So I'll kind of run through some of those with you now, and certainly um, we'll have lots of chances to practice our live delivery as well as our delivery in video format as well. I know I talked a little bit about eye contact when we talked about stage fright, and I will start with that real quickly just to remind you of how important good eye contact is. I would say if you had to boil down to the one most important quality for effective delivery, it would be eye contact, right? If your audience doesn't feel that you see them as individuals, then they're not going to connect with you, they're not going to connect with your message. And in fact, recording these little videos is kind of strange because, I mean, obviously I'm looking at the camera, which is a stand-in for you guys, but it's very different than obviously if I'm standing in front of an audience and then I can make actual real live individual eye contact with each of you, which obviously I can't do in a pre-recorded situation. But when you're talking to an audience, it's important that you see them as individuals, that you have basically a series of conversations. You may not end up talking to every single person. Let's say if you're talking in front of an audience of 1,000 people, there's no way you can make eye contact with all of them, but you certainly need to spread your eye contact around the room. And if you're effective in doing it, it'll really feel to the audience like you're looking at them. And so you pick out friendly faces, if that helps, in that are hopefully spread all over the place where you're speaking. And if you make sure you don't just look left or look right or look back, but if you really work the whole audience, it'll feel to people like they are being connected with. So spread your eye contact around. And as we had said, I think in the stage fright video, make sure that you don't just do this kind of back and forth radar lighthouse type of eye contact, or certainly don't look above their heads, but have a series of small conversations. So this means, for example, I might pick somebody in the front row and finish a sentence or two to bring home a particular idea that I'm talking about, and then I might move on with my eye contact and look at someone else to make a different point. So spread the eye contact around, have serious little conversations where you complete a thought with each individual, and then that will make you feel connected to them. You'll be able to see what kind of response you're getting to your message, if they're smiling, laughing, nodding, or if they're falling asleep. And if they're falling asleep, then you have to do something else to try to bring them back as an audience. But it gives you real-time feedback so you can monitor your own performance. And again, it makes them feel connected to you and to your message as it does for you to feel connected to them. Effective use of gestures. I never ever recommend that you script gestures into a speech. You will know when you've practiced a speech enough where the emotional beats in your speech occur. And we'll talk more about emotional beats in another time. But As you build a certain kind of emotional moments, and if you truly are true to those emotional moments, your body will respond with the appropriate gesture if it makes sense in that particular moment. Not that it should be scripted, but if you are just kind of naturally building to a particular point or an emotion, your hand may, punctuate a particular point at a particular point in time. So I always argue, and I know you should be able to leave your hands resting lightly on the podium or at your side, and then at the appropriate moment, you might end up making a gesture. It just should occur naturally. It should never be scripted. But don't worry about gestures, but do worry that your hands are available in case an appropriate moment to make a gesture happens. So that means don't have your hands in your pockets, don't have your hands behind your back, have them resting on the podium or at your side. Um, some people like to have a pen in their hand. It keeps them from making little nervous gestures. But again, if you have a pen in your hand, then that's a hand that's not free for gesturing. So gesture should be natural, should arise at the appropriate moment, and should never ever be scripted. But your hand should be available to make the appropriate gesture at the appropriate time. Your voice, which of course is your key instrument when you're speaking publicly. We will have done some exercises, or we're going to do some exercises on diaphragmatic breathing, which is certainly not something that I'm going to demonstrate now in a video. But if you're using good solid belly breaths, it'll give you a nice, think of a sail that's full versus a sail that's luffing. If you ever see a sailboat that's traveling and it doesn't have a good belly full of wind, the sail kind of luffs and wafts back and forth, wavers back and forth. And that's basically what happens to your voice when you don't have a good belly full of air in your diaphragm. Your voice can be very wavery, it can be very weak, and you can even exhibit something that's called vocal fry, which is basically running out of air and still talking. So someone who is basically stopped having enough air, and then they just feel it, they gotta continue talking, and then that's vocal fry. Sorry, that was bad acting. Okay, but so you always want to have a good full breath, and you want to have good diaphragmatic support, and you need to project. And projecting uses energy, which helps you with stage fright. And even if you're mic'd, if you're going to be speaking with a mic, if you can get a mic check in advance to make sure that the level is such that you can still have some energy and some projection in your voice, but not have your mic sound be overpowering, I think it's really good to be able to have some projection even in a microphoned situation. So practice with the mic, have the sound level checked with the mic. If you need to do more projection, you can lower the mic a little bit lower. If it's a lavalier, have it lowered a little bit further down on your shirt or your blouse, so it still gives you a chance to project. Some speakers do like to walk around the room, and so we'll give you a chance this semester to practice with a mic at the podium, to practice with a lavalier mic, so if you want to be able to walk around the room. And we'll even have you practice without a mic, because sometimes you will be in a situation where you are really expected to project and to be heard by everybody in the room. So all different speaking situations require different kind of projection. And if you are someone who likes to walk around the room, obviously you don't want to be hampered by a microphone at a podium, and you could certainly use a hand microphone or a lav mic, and we'll have a chance for you to practice with both of those options. Your use, having just said of vocal pauses. You need to be aware of your vocal pauses, and if you do that, try to eliminate them. Certainly the one that we're all familiar with is like, which of course doesn't mean anything anymore. It's become a verbal filler, a pause filler, but a lot of people also say or and those are verbal pauses, which basically should just be pauses. In fact, a pause can be a very effective technique when you're speaking. If you have finished a point and you want to make sure it's emphasized, just stop speaking. And that pause will let that idea sink in. So you need to think about the spaces between your ideas as a place where you can emphasize the importance of those ideas as well. So verbal pauses, thinking about pauses, thinking about breathing, right? Thinking about the role of your voice in projecting is very important. Let's see, what else do we want to talk about? Gestures, eye contact, use of your voice, use of your body. Um, how's that for a verbal pause?